the best response you can have to a payoff in a thriller is someone goes, "Oh, right, I forgot. Of course, I should have."
On Story offers a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. All of our content is recorded live at Austin Film Festival and our year-round events. To view previous episodes, visit onstory.tv. On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Clayburgh Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. From Austin Film Festival, this is On Story, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. This week's On Story, acclaimed Twin Peaks co-creator Mark Frost.
I consider storytelling honestly a sacred profession, and it's something that people ought to take very seriously as writers and as consumers. So I think it's great, and I think it's changed the paradigm, and I think it's the reason that we're seeing as much good storytelling now as we are.
In this episode, Mark Frost talks about the impact of the original cult favorite show, collaborating with David Lynch, and updating the series for a less innocent era.
It was so funny because they saw the pilot. It was a very peculiar process because we did the pilot, they saw the pilot, they didn't know what to make of it, but it tested really well, but they were terrified.
Which is their normal state.
That's their normal state. And they said, okay, well, maybe you can just make 7 more. So that was the first season. So we did all that in a vacuum. No one had ever seen it. So we had it's the 2-hour pilot and then 7 additional hours. It was 9 hours. And they said, okay, well, we really want to put it on at like 2 a.m. and, just in Poughkeepsie on an access cable channel. But we're going to have to put it on the network in April. And then, this reaction blew up in their face. And the show, if you look at that pilot again, what's startling about it is how real the grief is. The whole first hour is just about the discovery of the death of this young woman, and these very real, very powerful reactions by good actors showing you how devastated they are. I was kind of stunned when I saw it again. Nothing funny happens for quite a while. When Cooper comes to town, you start to roll with that, and as he starts to meet the town, then it gets funnier. But honestly, the pilot and really that whole first season is about grief. And no one had depicted grief on TV like that before. That's why we would get a lot of nervous laughter about it. When Grace who's an amazing actress, was actually wailing and keening like a character out of Greek mythology.
No! Oh, no!
Leland, we're ready to go with the contracts. Leland, what's wrong?
My daughter's dead.
So I think that's what caught people. There was an authenticity about it. And anybody who's lived in a small town or has strange friends, and we've all met colorful, weird, eccentric characters. This town just happened to have a few more of them than, maybe the general population. But that all kind of blended together.
Mm-hmm. you had a lot of time for reflection there. You know, what did that time of reflection do for your re-looking at what you had already done and how to present something new and different? And it was distinctly new and different, you know?
Well, I think what 25 years allows you to do is mature and grow into whoever you're going to be, and to think, I think, more interesting thoughts as you get older, and to feel more interesting feelings. And you get to deal more specifically with one of the great themes of any artistic endeavor, and that's the passing of time, this sense that we're trapped on this conveyor belt that's just going in one direction. And it's something we all share. It's really the baseline of human experience, is that we're not going to be here forever. So for me, it put me in mind of themes like mortality and friendship over time, and what really matters. And then we had the opportunity to go back and look at this very large set of characters and see what had happened to them and what their lives had done to or for them, and then wrap it all in a larger context. That was really my big objective. I said, we've got to get out of the town. We've got to enlarge the scope of the canvas, and we've got to make this about more than just this sleepy, creepy little hamlet. We want to make it a little bit more about contemporary life. So it afforded us a chance to take that kind of leap. And I think that was the most salutary thing about The Gap.
The town, too, was actual character in the original iteration, and really fascinating town. I mean, so much so you actually wrote a book about it and defined it, I think, a little better for the audience. But so how did that work into, I mean, it was so woven into the first round. How easy was it to let that go when you were doing this round? Because it seemed clear that was not as big a character.
Big piece of it. Well, I think the idea that we were going to focus more on Agent Cooper specifically this time around, that this was going to be his journey. And honestly, I went back and started looking at or thinking about sources like the Odyssey. Mm-hmm. This is about a guy trying to get back to who and what he thought he was, that he's been, like Odysseus, been cast on some foreign shore and has sort of lost his sense of himself. And we all feel that to some degree or another at various times in our lives. And how do we deal with it? Mm-hmm. And in his case, how does he reunite himself? How does he pull himself back together? In thinking about an overall thread for the story, that was it. It was the Odyssey. It was him finding his way home. My words to David at the beginning were, I don't think this is necessarily a TV show or a movie. We're going to be filming every page of a novel. And novels have the luxury of beginning more slowly sometimes. It isn't, you have to grab the audience by the throat in the first 35 seconds or you've lost them. It's let's take our time. It's a value that's been almost lost in our culture. Good stories take time. This time, number one, when we started talking in August of 2012, I came to David. I said, I feel like I have a way to get us back into this world, and we can go from there. We talked for almost a year before we ever wrote a word, just to hash all this out, figure out who, what, when, where, why. And then we started writing. I think it helped a lot that in the intervening years, I had begun and continued a career as a novelist. So I'm used to a longer, more complex narrative. That's what appeals to me. And David was absolutely firm about, I want to do all of it. I want to direct all of it if we're going to do it this way. And we both said, well, then no one else should write any of this. We're going to have to do it ourselves. So we ended up 3 years later with a 450-page script that we didn't even break down into episodes. And we handed Showtime this Manhattan phone book and said, try to get back to us by Monday. So there's something to be said for doing things in an unusual way. You can get people's attention sometimes by doing that. The only other person who ever saw the completed script was Kyle. Every actor was given only their pages, no context about when or where those scenes were going to play in the fabric. So it made for a pretty interesting set. Because no one really knew how it was going to work for them, and they took a leap of faith. We just asked everybody, this time take a leap of faith. Let's just go on this journey together and see what happens. One of the things that he's masterful at is creating mood on screen. Mm-hmm. He's got complete command of the medium visually and orally. Mm-hmm. I think his ability to, and he did the sound design here. He can create moods like nobody in my mind since Hitchcock. So yeah, that's a large part of what he does.
Can you talk a little bit about, when you were going through this process with David Lynch of just a year of talking about it, what were those conversations like that got you to a place where now you have this foundation of what the story is going to be to develop those episodes into that 450-page script? And was that part of it, this concept of evil?
Yeah, I mean, thematically, that was obviously a big part of the first go-around. And
but that had a lot more humor with the evil, I feel like. It was...
Yeah, it was more leavened, I think, by... But again, it was a different time and place. It was a more, frankly, innocent time than the one we're living in now. And it was more focused specifically on the town and all the lovable eccentrics that populate the town. Honestly, a lot of the things that informed the discussions for that first year were the global meltdown of 2008, 2009. The reason Vegas came to mind for me was these images of all these vast tract housing developments that had been built in the anticipation of this endless boom and were then abandoned. They were like ghost towns, but they were like 3-year-old ghost towns.
Very expensive.
Very expensive McMansion ghost towns. I'd never seen that on screen up to that point, and I thought, well, there's an image to work with. And so along with evil, there's themes like the perils of materialism. If you live a strictly material life, what happens if the money runs out? What are you left with? So thematically and in terms of motifs, that was something we were trying to work with throughout. That led to the evolution of Dr. Jacoby into Dr. Amp, the internet ranter who sells golden shovels for $29.99 to dig yourself out of the with.
What's lurking in that toaster waffle, those muffins, that frozen children's treat? Poison, deadly poisons. That's what's there. And what's waiting for you? Cancer, leukemia, autoimmune disorders, pulmonary embolism, warts, psoriasis, eczema, cardiac arrest. Where are the cops when we need them? Anorexia, body image, microbial toxins, bacterial toxins, environmental toxins, our air, our water, our earth, the very soil itself, our food, our bodies poisoned, poisoned.
So but you know, that's 2012. We started shooting in September of 2015, and we finished in April of 2016. we didn't know, most people didn't know what was going to come at the end of 2016 and what we're living with now. But there were overlaps between the concerns that we'd created in response to that first crash to the situation we have now. So I think it resonated culturally more than you could hope for. And that's just the sort of thing you get lucky with. I mean, you never know. You can't anticipate those things with this kind of lead time.
If you were sort of summing up again what you wanted this all to be about, not necessarily just for the audience, but for yourselves. I mean, what would you don't have to shorten it and give me 2 sentences. I mean, like, can you talk a little bit about what you guys were trying to?
Well, thematically, for me, it was this is the human condition. Life is strange, puzzling, funny, absurd, bizarre, tragic, horrifying, hilarious. It's all of those things. And when you've got a chance to do an 18-hour story, and by the way, along the way, a lot of the friends that you had making the show the first time around aren't with you anymore. The passage of time, again, the sense of mortality, the importance of friendship in that the void created by loss, all of those things became germane to the storytelling. I mean, just think about, just to pull one example out, the Big Ed and Norma story, which we really wait pretty deep into the story to conclude, but we dole out little bits and pieces of it along the way. And then you get that devastating shot of Ed eating his soup alone at the gas station. And it goes on for like 2 minutes, just a man eating soup. And it's honestly one of the saddest scenes I've ever seen. And then, of course, with that story, you get a much happier ending. So it's whenever you come across a piece of the story that you really like, you take your time and you tell it fully. Like I was determined. I said, we've got to meet Andy and Lucy's son. And it's probably only going to be one scene, but it should be a full scene. And I think David said, and Michael Cera should play him.
May the road rise up to meet your wheels.
That's a lovely turn of phrase. Thank you. My dharma is the road. Your dharma.
To me, that's one of the, I know that scene rubs some people the wrong way, but I would watch it every day for 2 weeks and be very, very happy. Wally Brando. My feeling was we needed an origin story for the evil that we have been depicting in this area. And I had mentioned the atomic bomb and White Sands, and what if something like this happened? What if it, and again, it's all metaphorical, but what if something ripped a hole in the space-time continuum and it unleashed it opened Pandora's box. Let's go back to Greek mythology. And things unanticipated and strange came out of the box, just like in the myth. So we wrote that. We wrote, I think the whole sequence is 12 pages. And David started to get some very clear visualizations of how he wanted to depict, for instance, the explosion itself. And we wrote, I think, a half a page describing it. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, that's going to be about 8 minutes of screen time, knowing David as I do. And sure enough, it was 12, I think. We said that's how the woodsman got here. And this creature that you see being born and crawling into the mouth of that young girl is the origin of the evil we've been dealing with for 27 years.
The horse is the white of the eyes and dark within. This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and ascend.
I thought it was an extraordinary hour of television. I mean, because what was interesting in structurally, the week before we had done maybe the most Twin Peaks old style episode. There were a lot of nice payoffs and introductions and things that made you feel like, okay, now I'm back in Twin Peaks. And then you get hit with this gut punch of an hour. So that's how it started, and that's what it was meant to convey. This is where Philip Jeffries became a key element of storytelling. He was a very minor character in Fire Walk with Me, but I felt also because of the actor playing him, who's so special, that he should play a bigger role. David felt that too.
Philip, is that you? Philip? Cooper, meet the long-lost Philip Jeffries. You may have heard of him from the Academy. And while Jeffries was apparently there, he raised his arm and pointed at Cooper and asked me,
Who do you think that is there?
Damn, I hadn't remembered that. Now this is really something interesting to think about.
Yes. I'm beginning to remember that too.
So to let him be the guide to the underworld, I mean, that's what, again, I always go back to mythology. This is the story of Persephone. It's the story of who's the Greek guy who goes into the underworld? Orpheus. It's Orpheus. When you tempt the gods, or when you break the rules, you put yourself in grave moral and physical peril. And I think that, for me, is the best way to explain the final hour of the show.
Philip?
Please, be specific.
The date, February 23rd, 1989.
I'll find it for you. It's slippery in here. It's good to see you again, Cooper. Say hello to Gordon if you see him. He'll remember the unofficial version.
It's an act of hubris to think that you can change history and change the flow of time. That's for the world of the gods, not for the world of mortals. So thematically, for me, that was of a piece with everything else we'd done.
You've been watching a conversation with Mark Frost on On Story. On Story is part of a growing number of programs in Austin Film Festival's On Story project, including the On Story PBS series, now streaming online, the On Story radio program and podcast in collaboration with Public Radio International, and the On Story book series available on Amazon. To find out more about On Story and Austin Film Festival, visit onstory.tv or austinfilmfestival.com.
the best response you can have to a payoff in a thriller is someone goes, "Oh, right, I forgot. Of course, I should have thought
On Story offers a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. All of our content is recorded live at Austin Film Festival and our year-round events. To view previous episodes, visit onstory.tv.